In preparing for this time of relaxation, meditation, and prayer, find a comfortable position in your chair. Relax. Let go. Slow down. Take a few deep breaths, breathing all the way down into your stomach. Breathe slowly through your nose, feeling your lungs and abdomen expand. And exhale slowly through your mouth, releasing any tension and stress you may have brought with you today. Going even deeper into relaxation again. Inhale deeply, hold it, and exhale. Perhaps letting your jaw drop, your shoulders drop. Going deeper into the stillness and the silence of this place. And beginning slowly and gently, coming back up, relaxed and refreshed, and knowing in our hearts and minds that indeed, wherever we go, God is, and all is well. Amen. I know there's a few people that this is their first time at Unity, and one of the things that is so nice about this place are people like Jonathan and the rest of the group, and Pete and everybody. They have so many talented musicians here. And the music is wonderful, and I appreciate it. Like I said, I have some friends here that haven't been to Unity before. Welcome, and welcome everybody. I'm glad we're all here in this place on this cold morning, but if you're not used to cold by now, I don't know when you ever will be. So, that welcome just took up about 25% of my allotted time. And as Jerry Reed sang in Eastbound and Down, I've got a long way to go and a short time to get there, so I got to put the medal down. But first, a short story. Could I get the image of those dogs and stuff up on the screen? Oh, there it is. A real short story. This happened just a couple of months ago. Down in that corner, the guy is me. The date is December 27th.
Go back to the Howard.
What?
Howard?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Okay.
You can pick it up.
Oh, yeah? Okay. Shit. Why don't we have another song? You know, when I was halfway through that, I knew Jonathan would. Anyhow, I'll try to stay close by Mother here. Down in the corner, that's me a couple of months ago, and that is December 28th. The dog's name is Cody Anne. I'm going to tell you an amazing story about Cody Anne, and it has to do something with forgiveness. When I delayed my trip to Florida this year because I thought Cody Anne was going to die in December. You might have guessed it, she didn't. So I got her to Florida, and she was doing okay, and then she started having some bad times. She's 14, which in human terms, that's about 101 for Labradors. So she's about 101 years old, and she started having some bad times, and she stopped. For those of you that have had dogs, you may have seen this. They stop eating. They don't want to get up. Sounds like me. They sleep all the time. Things like that. Maybe I should talk to the vet. Anyhow, it became pretty clear to me, and one of my good friends who's here today, who was down in Florida at the same time, he's known this puppy, or this dog, since she was a puppy. We thought she was going to die even around the day after Christmas. But on the 27th, I decided it was time for me to take her into the vet, to have her euthanized. And I carried her in. She hadn't stood up, she hadn't eaten. I carried her in, and she was completely non-responsive. And most vets, when they euthanize a dog, they have a canvas on the floor. So I laid her on the canvas, and the vet tech came in, and the vet came in, but he had some other dog to attend to for a while. So I laid on that canvas with Cody Anne, tears streaming down my face, hugging her, telling her how much I love her, which I have done for the last 101 years in her terms. And then the vet tech said, "Do you think she might want a last treat?" Kind of like they do on death row or something. They give you, your last meal. I said, "Sure, you can try." She hasn't eaten anything for me for a couple days, and the vet gave her a biscuit. And she ate it. I said, "Whoa, you have any more of those?" For her. So she ate 3 or 4 more. And then, the most miraculous thing, she stood up. Hadn't done that for a couple days. This dog loves my friend. He's here today. He couldn't even get a response out of her. She stood up. And then she walked around the room, and there were some bags of dog food there for the dogs to stay. She's trying to get into one. And then the vet came back, and he goes, "I must be in the wrong room." He said, "I'm supposed to euthanize a dog around here somewhere. Surely she's not ready for that." Took her out to the truck, came back in to see how much I owed them. They said nothing. But the reason I thought she was going to die is because she had this tumor in her abdomen. And she had her hind quarter was not good, and my vet at home said, "She's 101, just let her live out the month or 2 that she might have left." So that was the plan. She got up. She walked around. I told you that. That's a sign to me. He said, "Maybe we should take that tumor out." I said, "It's not a we thing." "You do that, I'll write the check." So, "You ready for that?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "There's a 60-70% chance she won't make it off the table." Guess what? She did. He said, "How much time do you think you might get out of a dog?" I said, "I'm looking for 1 day. 1 day. Just to hug her, tell her I love her. Just 1 more day." Ever had those 1 more day things? Or I wish I had that time back. To tell somebody I love them. To make peace with somebody. Somebody who cheated on the inheritance. Boy, there's a lot of hatred goes on for that one. You know, it doesn't matter about the money. It's out beyond who's wrong, who's right. Forgiveness is. It's an act of love. Yeah. See what happens. Later that day, he called. He said, "She's a tough old gal." I love those words. He said, "She made it off the table. I got the tumor out. It was the size of a volleyball. And just for the fun of it, I weighed it, and it weighed 6 pounds and 2 ounces. So he said, "We're going to keep her overnight." Called me the next morning at 7:30. He said, I came in early. I wanted to see how Cody Anne was doing. She was standing up in her cage. She ate 2 cans of dog food. I knew that would be about $4 each. She's ready to go home. The next day, he says, "Well, the recovery will be a couple months." The next day. So I go and pick her up. She's got a cone on her head because she's got a scar from here all the way, this long. She's got a cone on her head, and she comes over, wags her tail, and tries to lick me with this cone on her head. So I get right down so she could get right on my, gave her a big, she was amazing. It's 2 months later, she's still amazing. Still amazing. It's 2 months. Yay, Cody. And I got and they sent a piece of that tumor in, and it's not cancer, or not metastatic, or whatever they call that. It's benign. There we go. Make it easy on yourself, Howard. It's benign. So I was looking for a day, I got 2 months. Oh, thank you, God. One last thing. I wanted her home with me if she didn't make it off the table. And all of my dogs, Sam, Casey, who you're going to hear about in a minute, Cedar Pond's Clancy girl, little Maggie, Cody Anne, they're all on my farm, buried in a special place in the sunshine. And I wanted her, and I like to think that they're in the trees, that their energy is in the flowers, in the grass. So I wanted to take her home, and not really as a box of ashes. I wanted to take her home intact. I don't know why, but I wanted that. So before I took her to the vet, I went to Home Depot and bought a freezer. They froze my mother after she died for a while. It worked for my dog. So I bought a freezer. 7 cubic foot freezer. It's a really nice one. And I thought, I'm going to be down there for another month and a half or two, So she would be in the freezer. The day I left about 8 p.m. at night, I took that freezer back to Home Depot. But before I took her into the vet, I plugged it in. So it was probably about 0 degrees by the time the next day when I went to pick her up. Nothing ever went in that freezer. It was just 0 degrees for the month of January, part of February. So I looked at my receipt, and I had 90 days to take it back. So I took it back. And the lady at the return counter said, "What's wrong with this freezer?" I said, "Nothing that I know of." And, "Well, why are you bringing it back?" I said, "My dog decided that we didn't need it." She said, "I got to write something down here in this box. What do I do?" She said, "Isn't that a little odd that your dog and you would have a conversation about whether you needed a freezer?" And I said, "Ma'am, with all due respect, the truck I drive, the interior of the truck, where I live, my carpeting, my furniture, whether I go on vacation, when I go on vacation, whether I fly or drive, is up to my dog. So in our relationship, a conversation about whether or not we need a freezer is a rather minor issue. I think she got it. She was laughing at least. They didn't call the police on me. But anyhow, that's the story. Why is she still here? I have an idea, and I think after I read you a short story out of that book, which is this book, which I wrote about 1.5 years ago. For $12.95, you can get one on Amazon.com. Now, if that sounds like shameless self-promotion, it is. But there's a lot about forgiveness in this book. There are 17 stories, creative nonfiction. They actually happen there, but I juice them up quite a bit, so you'll keep reading them. Anyhow, where is it? There it is. Forgiveness. A quote. Mark Twain goes something like, "Forgiveness is the fragrance that a violet sheds onto the heel of the boot that just crushed it." I love those words. Forgiveness is the fragrance. It's a little violet in the meadow. Because of Mark Twain, I've smelled that fragrance. And you know what? I'm getting better. I didn't pick it and bring it up to my level. I went down to it. Smelled it. Fragrance that a violet sheds on the heel that just crushed it. Forgiveness. Can we get to be like a violet and shed some fragrance into the world instead of resentment, judgment, self-righteousness, hatred? The second part, out beyond wrongdoing and right doing. Maybe you recognize that as being the start of a poem. Mark Twain lived about 150 years ago, I think, round numbers. Rumi wrote those words about 900 years ago. So this thing about forgiveness and hatred and relief from the bondage of self is not new. It's been around forever. As a matter of fact, in about 6 weeks, it's Easter. Isn't that the Easter story? Forgiveness. I don't know much about the Bible. What I learned, I've mostly read online in the last couple of days preparing for this talk. I learned that while the Romans, were torturing Jesus. I mean, most people don't believe that anybody should be tortured to death no matter what they've done. They're torturing him to death, and in a hideous fashion. And that his last act, as an example of how we should be, or could be, was on that cross to say, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." I mean, that's amazing. Forgive them, these people who are killing me. They know not what they do. An example of forgiveness. Online it said that's in Luke 34:23. I don't know what it is, but it's some numbers. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. But if Jesus could get there, can I forgive somebody who upset me with something they said? Please. But I just carry that around. I'll build a story in my head. What did he mean? What was he thinking? I bet he's gossiping with other people about me, probably right now. How can I forgive that? For people who are in the Christian tradition, believe in that, and if Jesus was the person who was setting our example, and if he could make that forgiveness, act of forgiveness, which is really love, I think I can at least come a little closer than I have been. There are people right now here, not here in this room, but in my life, that I need to make some peace with. And I haven't. Maybe I don't have the time. Maybe I'm too proud. But But you know what? I wanted just one more day with Cody Anne, and I really don't want to say, I wish I had one more day to do that with those people. It's a lesson that I learned in our family on my mother's side. She had 3 brothers, makes me have 3 uncles. They went to war over a small amount of money. They never made peace. All 3 of them took it to the grave. All 3 of them. I visited the last one standing in hospice. He was 96. And I wondered how sad he must feel, or how much he would give for one more day, like Cody Anne, to say to his brothers, we used to get along. We used to be at peace. We've been at war for our entire life. There was collateral damage all over. The cousins never talked to each other because everybody lined up behind their dad or their husband. Collateral damage, I spread more hate in the world by 50 people got affected by this. If I had that one more day to come and say, we've been at peace, we've been at war, I like peace better. And do the forgiveness, act of forgiveness. The rest of Rumi, out beyond the idea of wrongdoing and right doing, there's a field. I will meet you there. And when our souls lie down in that green grass, the world becomes a beautiful place. I believe Rumi was talking about beyond who's wrong and who's right here, like my uncles. That's trivial. Let's go to that field of peace, that place of peace, and sit, or lay down, and meet each other at the level of spirit. That's what spirit wants us to do. That's why hatred feels so bad. Because wherever we go, God is, and all is well. If you really believe that, which is a unity message, there's spirit in them as well as me. Let those spirits take over. Reduce that ego. Reduce that pride. The spirits came from that. Our spirit is, we are just energy. We came from the same source. It's that oneness. We have a common source. Let the spirits meet at the level of spirit. There's a Namaste Cafe was mentioned. That's what that is. The spirit in me recognizes and honors the spirit in you, Jonathan. And I want to love you and meet you and connect with you at that level. Not at who's right and who's wrong. When I got up here and you wanted to sing, you were right. What's wrong? I forgive you. So Rumi, connecting at that level in that beautiful field. I believe, and one of the reasons I keep coming here, this is one of Rumi's fields, right here, this room. The people in here are looking for connection at the level of spirit. It's in all of us. It's alive, it's well, it's not damaged. This is what's damaged. The ego, my old beliefs, unquestioned beliefs that I've brought with me into that's what needs to be deflated, diminished, so that the sunlight of the Spirit can emerge from all of us, out into a world that desperately needs it. Watch television any day, any hour, and you will see it. So, but how do I forgive? I never remember that from Sunday school. Here is a process for forgiveness. I've always thought it was an adjustment in my mental state, but it always comes back. It seems to always come back. It seems like I send it up to the Lord. Forgive them. And you know what the message seems to be come bouncing back? I already have. Now it's your turn. Do that. You've been shown how on Easter. Do that. I've already forgiven. Now it's your turn. Okay, but still, how do I do that? What's the process if just thinking about it doesn't work? Is there protocol? How do I start? how do I start? Well, let me read to you a little bit about, about the hottest, most resistant resentment I ever had, and this is by far. I was with a woman when I was going to college for 11 years. She got out of college, I got out of college, well, I was almost out of college. She became a lawyer, and I was going to be a professor at the University of Wisconsin in Whitewater. That did happen. We bought a farm together. I still live there. That's where my dogs are buried. I can't sell it now. That's where my ashes are going to go. But anyhow, we bought a farm together. We were planning a life together. We were going to have some children together on that place. I wrote this story in Yellowstone Park a number of years ago, sitting on the Lamar River. And Cody Anne was in the back of my truck. And I was fishing. And that dark night of the soul that I had back in 1980, long time ago, came back. Here's what I said in this book. Robert Peterson in this book is my pen name. Sometimes I write in the first person, but Robert's mood changed. The dark night of the soul had come to Robert's life one night long ago. He remembered with a chill the loud ringing of his telephone and the haunting words of a sobbing woman. "Do you know what your girlfriend's been doing with my husband?" the voice asked. I hate that question. Standing in the kitchen of the farmhouse they had recently purchased, Robert weakly whispered, "No, please tell me." He was sickened by her answer. He finally managed to stammer, "Thank you for calling. I'm so sorry for this awful hurt. Goodbye." Robert felt gutted and discarded, like the rotting buffalo carcasses on the prairie. That's earlier in the story. Robert's breathing became labored as he relived that night in his mind's eye. He had sat there in stunned silence, in the rocking chair they had recently purchased at a garage sale for their new home. The joints of the wooden chair squeaked rhythmically, and Casey, their yellow Labrador dog, watched and listened as the chair's monotonous song wore on into the early morning hours. Then some said that, "What have I done?" he asked Casey, as the dog cautiously inched closer to the chair. "I should have known that the late night at the office had nothing to do with business," he sighed, and buried his face in his trembling hands. Then we'll go on for a while. I'll skip this part. Robert's grief was enormous. He tried desperately to forget and numb the pain. His drinking increased dramatically, and Robert met women in bars who seemed as lonely and desperate as he was. Let me go on. Talked about my dogs, Sam, Casey, Clancy Girl, Little Maggie, and now Cody Anne. And there's another one added in there, Lefty. He's trouble. Anyhow, Casey was the dog that had comforted Robert that night as he had rocked in the chair, waiting and sick with worry about his future. And Casey was the dog who'd moved close to the chair, looking at Robert with knowing, gentle, and loving brown eyes. Casey was the dog that watched intently as Robert had solemnly removed the Remington 12-gauge shotgun from the walnut cabinet and loaded it with one deadly red shell. Casey had danced with joy, believing that Robert was finally taking her hunting again. But something was dreadfully wrong. She could feel that. Dogs can sense that. Casey followed at a distance with her ears lowered as Robert slowly climbed the carpeted stairs in the second floor of the farmhouse in which his now dying dreams had been built. Robert Peterson's thoughts were not about hunting ducks, but rather how dark and unbearably dismal his life had become. There had been no light or joy in his life for a long time. There were only sickening hangovers, despair, and more failed attempts to replace the love which 14 months prior had walked out of his life forever. He could not think of any reason why he should continue to endure such pain. The smooth black steel of the gun lay cold in his shaking hands as he checked the chambered shell and trigger safety mechanism one last time. Robert Peterson had peacefully closed his eyes and was preparing to end his life when he felt Casey's cold and wet nose on the left side of his neck and cheek. Gently, she laid her broad Labrador head on his left shoulder, and he could feel her warm exhales on his ear and face. Robert set the gun down, placed his left hand on her soft, still head. "It's okay, girl," he whispered. She pushed closer to Robert and thumped the floor tentatively with her powerful tail. Robert's eyes welled in tears as he lay down on the floor with Casey in his embrace and convulsively sobbed away his deadly thoughts. The dog licked his salty, tear-stained face. Robert's pain was overtaken by the depth of connection and love he and Casey felt for each other. "You're the reason I'll stay alive today," he told her. "If I were gone, who'd take you hunting? And another owner might be mean to you. We need each other, Casey. Thank you for being here." Do you think maybe that's what happened with Cody Anne? I laid down next to her, put my hand on her head. She knew I was sad. I was sobbing. Maybe she said, "He needs me," like I said, Casey needed me. Huh? Maybe Casey was my angel. Maybe I was Cody's angel. I don't know. But she's still here. I'm still here, and I'm glad I am, and that's the title of this story, Glad to Be Here. I'm running out of time, but there's a song at the end here of this story. It's by Tim McGraw. He sang it about when he had a diagnosis in which he was going to die. And what did he do? Skydiving. Rocky Mountain climbing. 2.7 sections on a bull named Fu Manchu. And then, I'm not going to do any of that. But I can do this. And I love deeper. I spoke sweeter. And I gave forgiveness I've been denying. You know? I think that's a huge, huge part of being released from the bondage of self. There's an old saying, something that I read: hatred corrodes the container that it's carried in. Sometimes when I'm at Princeton Club working out, which is about twice a year, I think about all the people working out, hoping to extend their lives, hoping to be healthier. How many of them are thinking about, I've got a resentment going on while they're running on the treadmill. I don't know if they're gaining or losing in health. So I'm going to tell you real quickly what I did to get rid of that resentment against the woman in the book. This is a process of forgiveness that has worked for me. I suggest you come up with your own. Instead of maybe just thinking about doing it, come up with a process, because it's more than just a shift, for me at least, in a state of mind. The first thing that I had to do was to recognize that in difficult times, and resentments are really difficult for me, it's easier to blame others than to take a good hard look at myself. What was my part in this? What did I do? What did I say? Second, talk about it with another person, or two, or three. in the presence of whatever your notion of God is. Because whatever that notion is, God is on your team. Why would you leave God out? Talk with another person about what you just did. Kind of even write it down. Write this stuff down. What's my part in it? What did I do? How are we similar than different? Even, do they have a spirit in them? I think so. That's what we sing about, talk about in here every Sunday. Look for that. Sense it. Go to Rumi's field. Lay down in that green grass with that person, not literally, figuratively. Say they have a spirit, they have a history. Life is hard, me and them. And talk about that with a trusted friend, or two, or three. I talked about it with a psychiatrist. She asked me a question I'll never forget. She said, Howard, how well did you know that man you were preparing to kill? How well did you really know that person you were preparing to kill? All I did mostly was just run around, have fun, and drink for them. Go to school, I didn't know him at all. It's another reason I come back here. That's what this unity thing is about. Finding your essence, your spirit, your true self, sharing that with the world authentically. Connecting with other people who are trying to do the same thing. Third, pray for the willingness and courage to change the way you've been living, I've been living. If I'm living in a state of hatred, that hurts so much. It just drains me, consumes me. I believe that's the spirit within me saying, that's not the way. Go this way, a different way. Pray for the freedom that comes from being unhooked from that, being in that toxic cage of resentment. Finding the key to open that cage door. And then go about this work humbly, knowing that it's almost impossible to do this by myself. How can I think my way out of the tool that's broken? I need outside help. I get it here. I get it from my God. That's what I pray for. I want to live in a state of grace, not hatred. One of my favorite authors is Annie Lamott. She wrote in Grace Eventually, grace is not a reward for past good deeds. Rather, it's a gift for future good works. Casey, I think, kept me here for future good works. And I've been trying to honor her life in doing future good works for people. Doing what I'm doing right now, I think, is helping me immensely. Perhaps you, I don't know. Give me the courage and the energy to do the work, and the state of serenity that I need to move out of judgment, hatred, self-righteousness into this field that Rumi wrote about 900 years ago. And if possible, if it's safe, if it's a safe place for everybody, and I mean physically safe, if it's safe for everybody, return to that field, a Rumi field, and sit down with the person and talk. I talked to her about me. 8 years. The event that I read about happened in 1980. It took me 8 years to get to a place. The field was a restaurant in downtown Madison. I came there telling her what I needed to do in order to get unhooked. The key to the cage. From 1980 to 1988, the resentment of that betrayal, which I thought had ruined my future, descended upon me 100 times or more. I didn't have any control over it. It descended upon me, started consuming me, and I couldn't get it off me. Drugs and alcohol helped for a while, and then they made it worse. So I went to that field, to that restaurant, And I said, the reason I'm doing this is because I want to change. And I talked about my part in it. That first thing, when I wrote all that stuff down, it was very clear because I talked to other people, the presence of my God. And she sat silently and listened, but I could tell that she heard me. And then I said, the reason I've concealed something. I said, during our 11 years together, I had an affair of my own. She didn't ask any questions about it. And I said, I didn't tell you about it back in 1980 because I wanted you to stay with me. And if I told you about that, you'd say, well, you had one, now I got one, we're even, see ya. She left with the other man anyhow. If I wouldn't have said that, and I don't think that hurt her, it didn't, because we loved each other in a brand new dimension now. If I would have left that part out, which was very easy to do, would have been very easy, I don't think I would have gotten out of that cage. But as God is my witness, and me making stories up standing here about this stuff, as God is my witness, the resentment that descended upon me 100 times or more. After that day, I walked out. The cage was open. I walked out of that restaurant, and as God is my witness, that resentment has never come back since 1988. We love each other, this woman and I, in a new way. She said, how could you possibly forgive me for that? I said, because it made my life so much better. How? I said, I was drinking way too heavy before that event happened. From 1980 till 1984, those 4 years, I was on a death wish. Your act of love for yourself, which was the right thing to do, compressed my bottom, instead of being 4 years, 40 years, down to 4 years. Without that, I may well be dead. And she understood that. What I thought was the worst thing was the best thing for me. Last thing, because I'm way out of time. As a matter of fact, I'm way over time. But I want to say that there's a quote, I've had a couple quotes today, but a quote that really, really sticks with me. And it's attributed to Martin Luther King. And he said, hatred cannot drive out hatred. Only love can do that. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. So a life with love and light coming from the Spirit within each of us out into the world is a great hope. So I'm looking for people who are seeking light in their life to bring into the world and want to practice love and forgiveness instead of judgment and hatred. I found people here to be that group. And that's why I keep coming back to unity. And I hope you do as well. Thank you.